very least, the President appoint an Inspector General from outside the state bureaucracy to ensure that the recommendations are adequately implemented. I will ask one question on the state's misplaced allocations and one on the bogus protest over video narrative. The ARB notes that there was a view that Maine State did not consider Benghazi a priority. If we look at September 10th, 2012, just the day before the most recent 9/11 terrorist attacks against the U.S. and our people, we see that Secretary Clinton was engaged in launching a new program called the Diplomatic Culinary Partnership, where American chefs will travel the world to engage in culinary diplomacy. Certainly, this is an example of misplaced priorities. As such, what assurances can you provide to Congress that the State Department's budget request will prioritize U.S. national security and the security of our diplomatic personnel, especially at high-risk posts, over such programs like the Diplomatic Culinary Partnership, or over the close to the $1 billion that is allocated for global climate change programs? And secondly, who specifically changed Susan Rice's public talking points by eliminating references to al-Qaeda, and why? If there was a national security concern, what was it? When did the inaccurate, spontaneous protest narrative originate? Where did it originate? And why was that story deemed more fit for publication than the accurate terrorism evidence? And if Ambassador Rice had little direct knowledge of the facts on the ground in Benghazi, why was she selected by the administration to be the spokesperson on this subject? Ambassador Burns.
Well, Madam Chair, on your second question, and I'll turn to Tom on the first with regard to the budget. What happened in Benghazi on September 11th was clearly a terrorist attack. Secretary Clinton addressed that directly the following morning in her first public statement when she talked about an assault by heavily armed militants on our compound. Later that same day, President Obama talked of an act of terror. What was not clear that day was who exactly was involved, which terrorists were responsible, what their motives were, how exactly this terrorist attack came about, whether it was planned well in advance or more a target of opportunity. I am confident that the senior administration officials who spoke to this issue and the intelligence community experts on whom they relied acted in good faith throughout this period. Their focus was on trying to be as factual as possible. Their focus was on actions because, Madam Chair, as you know, there were a number of other concerns in this period. Over that period of days, we had mobs coming over the walls of our embassies in Cairo, in Tunis, and in Sana'a, and that was a very heavy focus for Secretary Clinton and for people across the administration. As we were able to clear up the inaccuracies in the original assessments, because as the ARB points out, there was no protest or demonstration before the attack took place. But it did take the intelligence community some days to determine that that was inaccurate as they debriefed the survivors of the attack on Benghazi. I'm sure our colleagues in the intelligence community wish that they could have cleared up those inaccuracies sooner, and they did it as quickly as they could, and then were in direct touch with the Congress and briefed you on it.
Madam Chair, as you are well aware, not only have I spent in the last 2 years up here daily making sure that we have the resources for the men and women who support the State Department. There's no one that cares more about this than I do, is Secretary Clinton, who has spent tireless hours making sure that every dollar, and I mean every dollar, that we use for taxpayers are used effectively. As you are well aware of, that the budget of the State Department, for everything we do, including all the assistance we give, including the aid to Israel, all the assistance we do for everything around the world, to the programs of PEPFAR, to supporting the 275 posts around the world for all of our staff, for everything we do, is less than 1% of the federal budget. We fight every single day to make sure we have the right resources, but as importantly, we make sure that it is a dime that is not wasted. We understand the importance of the budgetary constraint that this committee and this Congress is going through, and I assure you that we are thinking every day how we can make sure that every dollar is used wisely to protect our people, to provide the assistance around the world to the people who deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. On the specific questions regarding Susan Rice, do you have anything further to add about the talking points and the references? Because in emails, as the attacks were underway, the Diplomatic Security Operations Command Center was calling it a terrorist attack as it was underway. So it's not like the picture was clear several days later while the attack was taking place in emails.
Well, Madam Chair, as I said, both the Secretary and the President on September 12th, I think, addressed in very clear terms what happened and what the nature of the attack was. Second, the talking points that you referred to were produced by the CIA. I think the CIA has briefed a number of people on the Hill about the process that they went through, and I'm sure they'd be glad to, come up and answer in more detail.
And in my last 5 seconds, just to reiterate, we're glad that the Secretary is going to implement every recommendation, but we hope that there's an Inspector General, because without that, we have seen that the recommendations from previous ARBs have not been heeded. Thank you very much. Mr. Berman.